Some truths don't scream when they arrive. They whisper, curling into your life like smoke, impossible to ignore once you catch the scent. Tonight, that whisper started with a note, a single folded square of paper sliding from my fingers to his. If you've ever believed that one small act can change everything, stay with me. And if stories about second chances and secrets strike a chord with you, tap that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because what unfolded after that note was a storm no one saw coming. The ballroom shimmered like a jewel box cracked open under 100 chandeliers, every surface glinting with wealth and intention. The kind of night where fortunes weren't just displayed, they were negotiated over champagne flutes and million-dollar smiles. I slipped between the clusters of laughing executives with a tray balanced on my palm, trying to look invisible, trying to pretend my knees weren't trembling inside these borrowed heels. My black dress, cheap polyester dressed up to look like silk, felt like armor that didn't quite fit. But this wasn't about appearances, this was survival. $48 sat in my checking account. Rent was due in 6 days. And home. Home was a dim little apartment 2 bus rides away, where my 4-year-old son was curled up in bed with a neighbor keeping watch, because I couldn't afford a babysitter tonight. I told myself this gig would cover groceries for the week. Maybe a little extra if the tips were kind. I didn't tell myself the truth, not until I saw him. Daniel Hayes. The name alone could stop the air in a room, but it wasn't the name that made my breath hitch. It was the man himself, standing under the halo of a chandelier like he owned the oxygen. Tall, commanding, black suit tailored like it was sewn onto his frame. He hadn't changed much from the man I remembered, a little sharper around the jaw, maybe a little more silver at his temples, but still carrying that quiet gravity, that ease of someone used to doors swinging open just because he walked toward them. The CEO of Hayes Dynamics, the keynote speaker tonight. My former boss during that brief internship 5 years ago. The summer, everything shifted. And the man who, for 48 hours that felt like a dream, wasn't my boss at all, but something more. Something I'd buried so deep it hurt to dig up now. He didn't see me at first. Why would he? There were cameras flashing, investors laughing at his jokes, women in satin gowns leaning a little too close when they greeted him. I kept moving, weaving through the crush of bodies like a shadow with a tray of champagne. But my mind wouldn't stop screaming his name. Daniel. The syllables tasted dangerous. I told myself to focus, smile, serve, disappear. That was the plan. Until the plan broke. It happened when he turned, just turned, and his eyes swept across the room, snagging on me for a fraction of a second. My pulse stuttered. He didn't recognize me. Of course he didn't. Why would he remember a girl who spent a single summer fetching data reports and accidentally falling for him in conference rooms that smelled like ambition? I should have been relieved. Instead, a thought rooted in my chest like a living thing. If you don't tell him now, you never will. That thought was louder than my fear, louder than the pounding music and the clinking glasses. It drowned out everything until there was only this truth. I couldn't keep living like a ghost in my own life. Not when his blood ran in the veins of the boy asleep in that cramped apartment tonight. Our son. My hands shook as I shifted the tray to one arm and slid the note from my pocket. The paper was soft at the edges from too many rewrites. Too many times I'd chickened out and stuffed it away. 10 words, that's all. 10 words that could blow apart the fragile balance I'd built. I moved toward him like someone in a dream, my steps counting out a rhythm of don't do this, don't do. He was laughing at something a board member said when I reached him, his profile all hard lines and expensive calm. For a second, I froze. Then he turned, and his gaze brushed mine, polite, distracted. I seized that flicker of eye contact like a lifeline, set the tray on a passing waiter's stand, and leaned in just enough to place the folded note between his fingers as if I were handing him a napkin. Please, I whispered, so soft it might have been imagination. Read this. Then I was gone, swallowed by the tide of gowns and tuxedos before he could speak. My heart was a drum in my throat, pounding with every step I took toward the service hallway. Behind me, I pictured him unfolding the note, scanning those 10 words. I pictured the exact moment his expression would change, confusion sharpening into recognition, shock detonating behind his eyes. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't for our son. The words glowed in my mind as I slipped through the staff door and into the hum of fluorescent lights and industrial chill. My lungs ached, my hands trembling so hard I almost dropped the empty tray. What had I done? God, what had I done? I pressed my back against the wall, forcing air into my lungs while voices drifted from the ballroom like laughter from another universe. He could tear it up. He could toss it in the nearest champagne bucket and forget I ever existed. Or, my breath caught. He could come looking for me. And what then? I closed my eyes and saw Ethan's face, his crooked smile, his wild brown curls, the way he says mama, like a promise. He deserved more than this life of overdue bills and neighbors babysitting for free. He deserved more than a mother who flinched every time the phone rang because it might be another collection call. But most of all, he deserved to know where he came from, even if that truth burned me alive. I straightened, adjusted the apron strangling my waist, and tried to swallow the panic clawing up my throat. Maybe Daniel wouldn't come. Maybe he'd read the note, shake his head, and decide I was a liar or a lunatic. Maybe he'd walk on stage in 10 minutes to deliver his keynote and forget my name before the first round of applause. That would be safer, wouldn't it? Safer for him. Safer for me. But as I pushed open the door and stepped back into the golden glow of the ballroom, I knew some truths don't whisper forever. Sometimes they roar. And mine was about to start screaming. He didn't come right away. I spent what felt like a lifetime hiding in a service corridor, pretending to polish silverware I'd already polished twice, my hands trembling so badly the napkin twisted like a rag in a storm. The hum of the industrial lights sounded louder than the ballroom music bleeding through the walls, a reminder of the glittering world just beyond that door, a world where he stood, holding the truth in his hand. Maybe he'd laughed. Maybe he'd tossed the note. I almost believed that when the door slammed open so hard the shelves rattled. He filled the frame like a storm front. Daniel Hayes, stripped of the calm polish I remembered. His tie hung loose, his jaw sharp as glass, and in his fist was the note. My lungs forgot how to work. You, he said, the word cutting like a blade. He strode in, shutting the door behind him with a snap that echoed like a lock sealing shut. What the hell is this? He held up the paper like evidence. What do you mean? Our son. The words detonated between us, low and lethal. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. Exactly what it sounds like, I said, my voice thin but steady. His name is Ethan. He's 4. His eyes darkened, a storm gathering fast. 4, he repeated slowly, like the number itself was betrayal. So you were. He stopped, a curse ripping free. Jesus Christ, Emma. Hearing my name in his voice after all these years nearly unmade me, but I forced steel into my spine. I tried, I said, the words tumbling sharp. I tried to find you. You left the company. Changed everything. Every call bounced. Every email failed. You disappeared. His laugh was bitter, jagged. You should have tried harder. That hit like a slap, and something in me cracked. Harder. My voice shook, but the fury was clean. Do you think I didn't want you to know? Do you think I wanted this? Raising him alone? Working double shifts just to keep the lights on? Do you know what it's like to hold a baby and realize you're the only person in the world who cares if he breathes? Silence fell heavy and raw. The note slipped from his hand, fluttering to the floor like something broken. Then he moved, 3 strides, and suddenly he was there, heat and shadow, and the clean edge of his cologne punching through my ribs like memory. His voice was different now, hoarse and low. Is he? His jaw clenched hard. Is he okay? That undid me more than his rage. Not the accusations, not the disbelief, this. The crack in a man who didn't crack. My throat burned, but I nodded. He's perfect. For the first time, Daniel closed his eyes. Just for a second, like that word, perfect, was both a gift and a wound. Then they opened again, sharp with something fierce enough to make my breath stutter. I want to see him. My pulse slammed like a drum. Not tonight. Where is he? His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of an order no one ignored. Panic flared, twisting through me, but one look at him told me lying was pointless. Daniel Hayes didn't hear no, not in boardrooms, not in life. Home, I whispered. With a neighbor. He didn't blink, just pulled in a breath that felt like a verdict and straightened his tie with hands that trembled once, barely there. Give me the address. The words were calm, but steel threaded every syllable. When I hesitated, his eyes flicked to mine, dark enough to make my stomach drop. Emma, he said softly, and it was worse than a shout. Don't make me find it another way. And God help me, I believed he could. My fingers shook as I scribbled the address on the back of an order slip, the ink carving grooves into the paper. I handed it over without meeting his eyes, because if I did, I might shatter all over again. He took it without a word, tucking it into his jacket like a signed contract. At the door, he paused, his voice drifting back like smoke. "He's mine too, Emma. Don't forget that." And then he was gone, the echo of his footsteps fading into the ballroom's glitter and noise, leaving me alone in the harsh fluorescent light, heart pounding in the hollow of my chest, and the terrifying certainty that the life I built on secrets had just collapsed. Sleep never came. I lay awake in the dark, counting cracks on the ceiling, every sound outside sharpening the edges of my fear. The radiator hissed like a whisper I didn't want to hear, and every time a car rolled past, my heart leapt into my throat. Beside me, Ethan slept curled around his dinosaur plush, his little chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of a world that hadn't turned upside down yet. I wanted to freeze time, to hold him in this bubble of safety, but dawn broke anyway, gray and merciless. When the knock came just after 8, it still felt like a bullet tearing through the morning. I didn't need to look. I knew. Daniel stood in the doorway, not the tuxedoed king of the gala, but something rawer. Jeans, sweater, eyes burning hotter than last night's ballroom lights. For a moment, we just stared, the air thick with everything unsaid. Then Ethan toddled out, rubbing his eyes, curls sticking up like a crown of mischief. And in that instant, time fractured. Daniel's gaze locked on the boy, and I saw it happen. The disbelief, the recognition, the quiet devastation of a man meeting his reflection in miniature. His knees bent like gravity had yanked him down, and suddenly he was eye level with Ethan, frozen in a silence so fragile I was afraid to breathe. Ethan mumbled around a yawn. "Who are you?" Daniel's throat worked like he had to force the words out. "I'm a friend of your mom's." Ethan blinked at him, then held out his dinosaur with solemn importance. "This is Rex." Daniel's hand shook when he took it, and when his eyes lifted to mine, they were stripped bare in a way that made something splinter inside me. But the softness didn't last. The second Ethan settled in front of the TV, Daniel straightened, his jaw locked in that iron line I remembered too well. "We need to talk," he said, voice low but sharp enough to slice. I slipped outside and pulled the door close, heart pounding. "Not here," I hissed. "He can't." "Where?" His tone cracked like a whip. I swallowed hard. "Later. After breakfast." "No." His voice hardened, and I saw the man who closed billion-dollar deals without blinking. "4 years, Emma. Don't." I snapped, fury flaring through my fear. "Don't you dare act like you're the only one with scars. You walked away before you even knew what you were leaving." His eyes blazed, and for a second, I thought he'd fire back, but then something shifted. He stilled. His head turned slightly, like a wolf scenting danger, and that's when I heard it too, an engine humming low from the curb. I glanced over his shoulder and froze. A black SUV idled across the street, windows tinted so dark they ate the morning light. I hadn't seen it pull up. Daniel had. His body went rigid, and for one fleeting second, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not control, fear. He masked it quick, but not fast enough. "Daniel," I whispered, my stomach knotting. "What is that?" He didn't look at me, didn't blink, just spoke in a tone so calm it scared me more than the SUV. "Pack a bag." My breath snagged. "What?" "For you and Ethan." "Now." "Daniel." His gaze cut to mine then, and I stopped because I'd never seen his eyes like that. Hard as steel, burning with something deadly serious. "Someone else knows," he said quietly. "And if that's who I think it is, we don't have time." Behind me, through the door, Ethan laughed at something on the cartoon channel, that sweet sound slicing through the tension like a knife. My heart cracked under the weight of it. I gripped the door frame, my pulse a wild animal in my chest, and realized the truth. This wasn't just about Daniel anymore. Or me. The secret I'd kept for 4 long years wasn't a secret anymore. It was a target.